Hey there, Jim Johnson for Accent Help. I want to talk a little bit more about the concept of nasal. There are a lot of dialects that people will say are nasalized or really nasal dialects. And the reality is that they may or may not actually be nasal. If something's nasal, it means it's going through the nose, and usually they're implying that it's going through the nose when it shouldn't go through the nose or doesn't have to go through the nose. So that means that this velum, or soft palate, is open. So this is the roof of the mouth, the hard palate, the bony part, and then the muscular soft palate, the tongue, and this is the front of the mouth, the Dracula teeth, obviously, and the lips and the nose. So this is the nasal space up here, and when the sound comes up, it can either go through the mouth or through the nose, or it can go through both. So if this portal is open, it's going through the nose, at least partially. So when something's really going through both, what you've got is a nasalized sound. So something's becoming nasal when it doesn't necessarily have to be. Now, in that case, yes, it's nasal, or an individual is nasal. Most of the time I don't find that dialects or accents are nasal. There may be some exceptions to this, but oftentimes what people call nasal is actually what I commonly use the term twang for, and I've heard it from a few different sources. One of them is the teachings of a singing teacher, Jo Estel. And the twang, as she teaches it, and this seems accurate as far as I know, is that it happens here at what's called the airy epiglottic sphincter, or the airy epiglottic muscle. So you've got your voice box here, basically, your larynx, where the sound's created. And this is your epiglottis. It's a flap that actually will close on the top of your throat, that front part of your throat that leads down to your lungs. It'll close up, and there's a muscle that does that, the AES. So when that muscle actually closes up and tightens up, you get something that becomes this twangy sort of sound that you'll hear a lot in country music, twang. Or you'll hear it from a lot of people who have that sound that really cuts through. It's a little bit of that Jerry Lewis sort of voice, hello. That extreme is a closing off of this so that this epiglottis actually becomes a little closer to closing this space off, which you close that space off anytime you swallow. If you put your hand on your throat and swallow, you'll notice your throat seems to go up, right? Your Adam's apple, or that space there in the larynx, it goes up. And it's also your epiglottis coming down to close it off. It's so that whatever you're swallowing doesn't go down the wrong pipe. So that it goes down the pipe down to your belly instead of going down to your lungs. So when this space sort of closes up a little bit more, that is twang. And if an accent has a lot of twang in it, oftentimes people call it nasal. Now, funnily enough, I find that when people go into a lot of twang, a lot of the times their soft palate, instead of sort of doming upwards a bit more, which rounds the tone usually, what ends up happening is that it seems to flatten out a little bit more. So even though the sound is not nasal, because it's still closing off this port up through the nasal space, it's got a sound that we associate with nasal because it's got twang in it. So that's my guess with a lot of dialects that we say have twang, or that we say are nasal, but are actually twangy. That's my shot at it anyway.